A career high 55 points for Giannis, and in the end, they needed it. But it was a historic performance, and a performance that Frank and myself are going to have a lot of fun breaking down. He continues to really physically push himself beyond the limits, and he did it tonight against the Wizards on a night that we are rightly pointed out that the Boston Celtics also got mopped by the Oklahoma City Thunder. So let's have some fun on this podcast.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Bucks. My name's Kane Pittman. You can see and hear me on this show Monday to Friday, and also find my work over at ESPN. And alongside me, the founder of brewhoop.com and longtime voice of the podcast, Frank Madden. And we thank you, of course, for making Locked On Bucks your first watch or first listen of every single day. And we've had a couple of sketchy post-game podcasts recently where we had to break down pretty disappointing losses, to be fair. But tonight, not only did we get the win, but we get the historic performance of Giannis. So I'm sure there's going to be lots of people excited to listen to this podcast that is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. It's BetOnline where the game starts. And Frank, this wasn't a perfect performance. This wasn't the perfect win. It wasn't the dominant win that you want to see, what you think is a championship contender against a team that is a fringe play-in tournament. But we're going to start with Giannis, and we can get to whatever else we need to at the end, because he plays 36 minutes in this game, 20 of 33 from the field, 15 of 16 from the free throw line, Frank. He adds in 10 rebounds, 7 assists, couple of steals, and no blocks. Something to work on there, Giannis. And a career high 55 points. And for all the stuff we talk about Giannis, to me, I just continue to go back to the physical dominance of this man when he looks like he is broken down and gasping in the breaths and hands on the knees and drenched with sweat. This fourth quarter to score 19 points and really just absolutely steamroll anyone in his path was something to behold. And if you're looking for anything to question here, he's only a couple of points off the franchise record as well. But this is a performance we'll remember for a long time. And Frank, I know for a fact that you would have enjoyed this one.
Yeah, I mean, as you pointed to, right? Like, it was not sort of the, 15 to 20 point lead throughout, comfortable type of performance, but 19 points from him in the fourth quarter. As you said, they needed those 19 points. I think he scored 12 in a row to basically put the game out of reach. But I mean, it got to 2 points early in the fourth, I think it was. It got to 4 points at one point, kind of think like midway through or so. And then it really wasn't until Giannis just kept mashing the turbo button. And as you said, I mean, the assault on the rim tonight was, like historic levels of, as you said, just physical dominance. I mean, one of the reasons why we see all these crazy scoring performances because of the 3-point shot and guys getting hot from three. Obviously a Klay Thompson performance yesterday, scoring 54, hits 10 threes. Of course, that's a great way to juice your scoring totals. But for Giannis tonight to get to 55, 0 for 3 from deep, 1 out of 8 outside the restricted area when I was looking at the shot chart. So 19 of 25 in the restricted area. And it's not like, he had the world's greatest passing setting him up for all these easy buckets or something like that. I mean, most of those are him catching the ball at the elbow, dribbling it up, getting a screen, getting a switch, attacking a switch, just getting a freight train type action in the open court going end to end. I mean, he's making all of that happen. There's, as you said, nothing easy about what he's doing. Hashtag Zaza Pachulia, nothing easy. And just the way that he's been able to, just especially in the last couple of games that he played, the Minnesota game, now this one, obviously most of that Chicago game, you're just sort of putting the Bucks on his back. Because even tonight with Drew Holiday back, I mean, Drew didn't play a ton, only scored 6 points, both of them on threes in the first quarter, and then didn't score the rest of the game. It wasn't like, this was kind of like the full strength Bucks just minus Chris. This, you didn't really have that much in Drew tonight either. And so you needed everything from Giannis. And obviously tonight he had a sense of knowing exactly what was needed. And We saw it at the end of the first half. Bucks had a pretty narrow lead. He comes in and sort of turbocharges a run to go from being down 49-46 after a couple of Washington threes to go up 61-49 at half. And you felt like, okay, feeling pretty good going into halftime. He's at 24 at halftime. Just, again, attacking, like, didn't matter who was guarding him, right? Like, he could tell he felt very happy when he saw Porzingis in front of him, because he knew that Porzingis just could not move with him in space quickly enough to keep him from getting to the rim. And, again, whether it was Daniel Gafford, Kyle Kuzma, Denny, everybody was fighting a losing battle. And I thought it was interesting in the first quarter, they had a bunch of strips where they were able to get hands on the ball. It felt like Giannis had probably like three. Took him a few attempts to actually get his first bucket. They actually were able to kind of strip him, keep him from getting to the rim that way. But over the course of the game, they just didn't have anything for him. And again, this is a team that has some bodies, right, between Gafford and Porzingis in terms of shot blockers. Hachimura physically can move his feet pretty well. Kuzma, Denny, like, those guys can all move pretty well. They're not like bad defenders, but again, if you don't have your team defense on a string with Giannis playing the way he is right now, he is capable of doing this. And again, like, there's nobody else in the league that could put up 55 points on 0 3-pointers except for Giannis, and for him to do it tonight was incredible. And as you said, the free throw shooting as well, vintage Game 6 of the NBA Finals performance in terms of the free throw shooting. By the way, I believe that his best ever free throw shooting performance in the NBA, I think he went 17 for 17 against the Washington Wizards a few years ago once. So dialing a little bit of that Washington Wizards free throw shooting up again tonight. But yeah, I mean, again, this is why we podcast after every game, because sometimes when you are covering a guy like Giannis, you are going to get these historic performances, and you just got to sit back, and some of the plays he make, you just laugh. And I don't know, I maybe the most memorable play of the night was the one he didn't finish, the dunk in the last 2 minutes where it looked like he was absolutely going to detonate. I think it was Daniel Gafford who was.
Goodness. That would have been like
saved from like perpetual highlights.
Oh my god, that was a new level. That was a new level of anger on that dunk, Frank. We've got a lot of dunks to go through. I don't know whether you have like an all-time favorite, but that would have been, for pure ferocity, that would have been up there.
It was a 2-foot dunk. It was a very unique for Giannis to attack the rim off the dribble and go off of 2 feet and to just pull back with the one hand like that. He normally, when he's attacking in motion, he's usually going off of 1 foot. I mean, he's incredible jumping off of either his left or right, finishing with his left or right, probably the most versatile dunker. But yeah, just something about that, just the way it felt like he kind of went up a little higher when he contacted with Gafford, which is one of those things, you occasionally see, like the Tom Chambers dunk is always the one I think of, the Tom Chambers dunk over Mark Jackson, where he like levitated higher after he made contact, and it felt like it was a little bit of that going on. But again, I haven't seen a bunch of replays of it, but yeah, it was too bad. I mean, at that point the game was the game was pretty much over, so it wasn't like as excruciating. If that had come like at the start of the fourth quarter when the game was still really close, it would have been like, oh my god, I can't believe that's the shot he missed. But it came at a good time, let's just say that. I think he already had his 50, I think, at that point, right? So it wasn't quite as frustrating as it could have been. But yeah, that would have been the all-time capper of a dunk. What an incredible play that was, just to witness, just the physicality and just how high he got and this close.
I think the interesting thing about the timing of that, I think it was 7 or 9 points at that point. So he missed the dunk. I think the Wizards scored, right? And then the Bucks missed a wide open 3. I think it might have been Pat. And then I was just thinking to myself, geez, hopefully this doesn't get back to that sort of 3-point range again. But the Bucks were able to hold it off. The Porzingis matchup was fascinating to me. I don't know about you, Frank, but every time they play against each other, and honestly, Porzingis is like having a decent season, and he's been. I had some decent moments after the ACL, but it reminds me every time I see them too of the game the Bucks played against the Knicks many, many years ago. It was on national TV, And Porzingis dropped like 37 or 38. I think Mike Breen was on the call. He was dropping threes from the logo left, right, and center.
The Knicks came back from a big deficit, and Kristaps hit like a pair of like 30-footers, I think, in the fourth quarter. And it was just like, oh, crap. It was one of those rare games at the time. It felt like whenever the Bucks got on national TV, especially home games, they really came through. And you're right. Like that game was like one of those, and I'm sure Knicks fans after that game were thinking like, ooh, Porzingis maybe better than Giannis. And it didn't work out in the end.
And then he, of course, got injured, not in that game, but it was against the Bucks
Giannis
as well.
Yeah. Giannis contested. Yeah.
It's just crazy to think how that, and look, he's 7'3", so there's some differences there. And, he's not physically the same guy as Giannis, even when he was at full health. But you still see him do some stuff tonight with these jump shots off the dribble and those types of things. A crazy talent, and I'm not sure what those injuries have done for him. We've probably got more Giannis stuff to talk about after I talk about that online.
I just looked it up just before you do the ad read. So Giannis missed the dunk. They were up by 12. It was 116-104 with 2:32 left. Giannis misses the dunk, and then, he was so shell-shocked. He didn't get back on defense. Rui Hachimura ends up getting a wide open three to make it 116-107. And then, as you said, Pat missed an open three, and then Brook blocked 2 straight shots. He blocked Monte Morris, and then he got Kuzma. And then finally the Bucks got a rebound, and then Giannis scored yet again. And I think that was I think that was when he snaked between I think it was what was it, Porzingis and Hachimura. And again, like sometimes, like, how does a guy that big like wriggle between other enormous humans? I don't know how he's able to do that, but that was just an incredible. I think that was where he started to flash the Milwaukee on the jersey as he walked into the fans, which was a pretty cool moment. And he talked about it after the game. Just the love affair with the city of Milwaukee and Giannis. It's again just something that like for us as fans, right? Like 20 years ago, if you had told us that you'd have this guy feeling this way about this city and winning a championship, I mean, again, it just kind of rekindles all those incredible feelings that you have about this person and what he's meant for this franchise, this city. So again, just a regular season game, whatever, it's game 37 or whatever it might be. But again, nice reminder that very cool things can still happen in the regular season. And this is why by the way, the people I feel worse for, I got to see a great game on Friday night. You got the 2 straight Wizards games. If anything, you would have thought the first Wizards game would be the safe one to buy tickets to, because this game comes on the front end of a back-to-back, them having to go to Toronto tomorrow. Instead, the people who went on Sunday get an absolute dog of a game with no Giannis, Drew, or Chris. They get blown out, and the people that come tonight get to see Giannis put up a career high and the Bucks to win a super fun game. So, again, this is just the problem with trying to time and go to a regular season NBA basketball game. But so it goes. Shout out to you guys that suffered through a really bad game the other night, and hopefully some of those people got to also go to this game tonight.
Yeah, we've got a couple of people in the stream that have been commenting that they're just getting home from the game. Perhaps they're on the way home from the game. But yeah, that's a pretty special one. We've got more on Giannis to come. Maybe a vibe check. Vibes are always better when you win, Frank. And then also some of the things that we didn't quite like tonight, because as we said, it wasn't a perfect performance, but we need to make sure we knock out all the Giannis stuff before we keep rolling. And I mentioned Bet Online. It's your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional sport. But after a night like tonight, you might want to jump on the MVP train for Giannis. Last time I checked, all the odds I've got here, he's the 4th favorite behind Tatum, Jokic, and Doncic. The non-American players looking to put a monopoly or continue to hold the monopoly on the MVP. And I think they might be in the running with 3 of the top 4 candidates there, non-American players. But go to betonline.net for all the fastest and easiest odds and trends and everything else you need there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. That's BetOnline, where the game starts. Hey, Frank, you mentioned, the fans, and you mentioned Giannis when he's sort of flashing, and I'm wearing a Jordan top, so I don't know if I can flash the Jordan name, but I'll flash the Jordan name. But if you're, I saw a number of fans that were sort of in those pretty cool seats, baseline seats, and I was thinking they'll have a pretty cool photo if they were the fans, like there was one fan that was flashing Milwaukee back at him or whatever, which would just be a really cool photo to have, which reminded me, as most of the people listening probably know, I spent a few years living in Milwaukee, and I didn't realize this one time, but I had to go into, I don't know specifically what hospital it is, but I had to go into a hospital in Milwaukee for something. And there was this huge like mural, I guess, of the Bucks, and the crowd. And this was before I was doing any media stuff. So I was having a look through and I'm like, oh, that's a pretty cool photo. And then I saw myself in the photo, and it's Jason Terry, and he's like doing this to the crowd, like firing up the crowd. And then I'm like firing, doing it back to him. Anyway, it was just a hilarious thing. I don't know if that photo's still up in the Milwaukee hospital, whatever it is. But if you live in the area and you have to go in there and you see Jason Terry going crazy at the crowd, I used to have a humongous beard. See if you can spot me. Let me know. But it was funny. I saw Eric name, because we always talk about like how do the Bucks use Giannis, or what are different ways that they can use him in games. And we know the stuff outside the restricted area hasn't been great so far this year. He's still in the mid-70s at the rim, which is mind-boggling when, as we've discussed, everyone knows that's what he's trying to do. And I saw Eric tweet tonight saying basically every time they use Giannis on a Wade cut, he gets a score. We've seen him get a couple of dunks out of it. We've seen him get a couple of layups out of it. We've discussed the idea of different guys coming back into the lineup. How can they use him? And for some reason, we had a couple of listeners that got offended, like, you want to use Giannis as a screener? But no, it's just like trying to free him up to get him in different spots on the floor. We've seen they've used probably more Joe Ingles and Giannis stuff tonight than we've seen in previous times, even though there's only been a couple of games. Did you see anything different, or do you see anything different they could do? And I understand it's a funny question to ask after he scores 55 points. But as we continue to discuss this offense and different ways they can use it, have they done anything different this year, I guess, is the question I'm asking.
I think one thing that we've seen some success with is Giannis coming from the left wing, taking like a dribble handoff. A lot of times it's in context of like basically a 4-5 pick and roll with Brook Lopez. And again, if Giannis can turn the corner, then great. Giannis, is going at the rim. Other times we've seen teams like switch that. And I thought tonight, we haven't talked about basically anybody else in the Bucks. And again, not that anybody compared to what Giannis did, but Brook Lopez, some early foul trouble tonight. But by the end of this game, they had one play where they ran that and they end up getting a switch, and Giannis, smartly throws it down to Brook, who's literally just has basically put his man under the rim, catches it, dunks it. That I think it was the Brooklyn game, which of course was one of those like forgettable games at the end. But the Bucks kind of kept trying to make a comeback. I think in the fourth, one of the reasons Giannis didn't score in the fourth at all was because of some of the switching and the pressure they were putting on Giannis. But he kept getting the ball down to Brook in the paint, take advantage of the fact that the Nets are a really small team. And so I think that's one of those things that, we have been talking about for years. And I think when you look at Brook, the fact that, the 3-point shooting has rebounded in a major way this year. Not just rebounded, but been at career high levels for most of this season from three. And you combine that with the fact that, it's like you give him the ball in the mid post, like, especially if the clock's running down, like, again, he settles for like the step back, 20-footer way more than you'd like, but he's ridiculously good at shooting that shot. He hit another one tonight. But then when he does get the ball close to the basket with his length and his touch around the rim, Brook is so good. So I think, again, kind of unleashing the Brook Giannis 2-man game a little bit, I think has been fun to watch, especially probably with Giannis, the number of bricks that he's seen guys throw up when he kicks it out for 3-pointers. Giannis is probably maybe a little bit more interested in trying to find Brook around the basket these days, just because he probably doesn't trust the other guys to make wide open threes as much as he might have in the past. And yeah, I think the cut that Eric was referring to tonight was Pat Connaughton kind of curling in, dribbling, attacking from one side, and basically like Giannis kind of cutting in almost like, a running back behind the line of scrimmage, getting a handoff, a little running back toss, and basically getting the defense going the wrong way. And he got a wide open dunk through that this way. I think the wrinkle that we've talked about it, we saw it first in that Pelicans game, but it was a cut from the weak side off a Drew Pat pick and roll on the right wing, which has worked surprisingly well. I think we've seen like basically that drew Pat or other guys with Pat running that pick and roll. And Pat, again, you think of him as a pick and pop guy, but when he has rolled to the rim, they've actually been able to pretty, I don't know, regularly maybe is overseeing it, but they've gotten a bunch of layups for Pat with that type of roll. And so, kind of then an interesting secondary kind of look at that is, Giannis, when he's off the ball, we saw him a couple games in a row. I think it was against Cleveland as well. The next game, he had another cut from the weak side wing to basically the elbow, kind of like mid paint area. And again, when he catches the ball with a head of steam, he's got those awesome hands, and with a little bit of daylight, he's obviously going to send it down. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, like so much of what we're seeing is just kind of letting Giannis cook, for better or worse. Let him get into a 1v1 matchup and try to just space the floor around him. And again, when other guys are missing, then the pressure on Giannis just becomes pretty astronomical, because it really is just, Giannis in a cloud of dust, because the other guys are really not making the defense pay. But, kudos to Giannis. I think the thing that gets lost so much in the kind of skill debate, right? And, again, tonight, he had a number of chances kind of on those little non-restricted area paint shots, just still can't find that touch. But, his ball handling, right? That's the funniest thing to me about like the skill discussions, like the level that his ball handling and his dribbling has gotten to enable him to get to his spots is pretty remarkable. And I mean, it's a question that I would pose. Giannis is now officially listed as 7 feet tall. Find me a better 7-foot ball handler than Giannis Antetokounmpo. Kevin Durant is the only guy that you could, to me, like maybe put in that discussion, because again, if you say KD is actually 7 feet tall, which officially he's not, he's not listed at 7 feet. I think he might be only 6'10" officially, but other than KD, who basically plays like a wing, have we ever seen a 7-footer that can dribble the ball? And of course, we always think of it in the open court. And he had another, I mean, just a handful of just absolute incredible drives end to end tonight. But have we ever seen a guy this tall be able to handle the ball and create for himself, even in the half court, just in terms of relentlessly getting the rim the way Giannis does? I don't know. YouTube audience, tell me who I'm forgetting. Because
Wemby's coming.
By the way, it's weird. Wembanyama, you see him hit all these incredible shots. He shoots these like 1 foot like runner threes and stuff.
Absolutely, it's straight up bullshit.
Honestly, I was looking at his basketball reference. He's shooting 29% from 3 this year. So I guess his like shot selection is just horrendous. By that, I'm not saying like he's not the first overall pick or something like that, but
no.
He at least he's not, putting up whatever it is, 30 points a game on, 60, 40, 90 splits or something like that. He at least appears to be mortal for the moment, in terms of just as a shooter. But again, I'm sure he's going to be a really awesome shooter. But again, we probably shouldn't act like he's Dirk Nowitzki in terms of shooting quite yet, but he's going to be really good. And
that's fair.
Again, how Giannis manages to do what he does with, again, that part of his game just really not being a big weapon at all is amazing. I thought one of my favorite plays was the towards the end of the half, when he kind of, we talk about him taking those dribbles to the left and kind of pre-programmed rising into that depth jump shot. And he did hit one of those tonight in the first half. And then he looked like he was going to do it again. And he got Porzingis to bite on a pump fake and then does a nice little step through for a layup to end the half. And that was, again, kind of capped off that run. I think it was a 15-0 run or something like that to end the half. So, yeah, I mean, again, it's just I think he's had games. We've talked about like the Golden State game where he's clearly working on his jump shot in game, but it has seemed of late, like especially since the Chicago game, these last 2 games, it seems like he's just like, I'm not going to, I don't want to settle for a bunch of jump shots. Like he really has worked to get to the rim. And I mean, my God, like it's a sight to behold.
So you mentioned that quote. I didn't see it, but Paul Henning just tweeted it. Wouldn't be the player I am today without this city. You don't play for the name on the back. You play for the name on the front, which we love to see. Now, Before I ask you, we'll check in on a little vibe check, which basically is just we're going to talk about the Boston Celtics and what they did tonight. The points in the paint. So obviously it was a point of, or a talking point of contention before the game based on the 72-26 number, which is just outrageous and not something that you see with the Bucks. Now, clearly you don't have Giannis. That's one thing, but still the 72 points. So they gave up 60 points in the paint tonight, but the Bucks are up at 66 plus 40. No surprise there because they have Giannis. And shout out to Marcus Johnson, who had the prediction at the start of the game that Giannis would score 42. Ye of little faith, Marcus Johnson. Didn't expect he was going to drop 55 in this game. But the paint defense. So this is what I wanted to get to as a final point on this game, really. I saw you tweeting about Bobby Portis. Obviously, we know what Brook Lopez has done. This defense has dropped off over the last week here. And I've seen a lot of people talking about Bobby and your point, and this is not new. We've discussed this before about if you don't have Brook Lopez out on the floor, perhaps just switch a little more. I mean, that's kind of the point of being versatile and having the versatile lineups. We saw a bunch of weird lineups today with sort of Beauchamp, Ingles, Portis, Giannis, and maybe one other guard, but not necessarily a point guard. So, we're seeing a lot of people talking about the defense of Bobby this year. Do you feel like it's been demonstrably worse?
I don't know if it's demonstrably worse. I mean, it feels like the Bucks have switched less this year than they have the last couple of years, actually, with Bobby specifically. Again, I'm not saying Bobby's like a great switch defender, and I'm always a little wary of switching too much because, again, then you're allowing your bigs to get stuck on the perimeter, and then they're not helping out on the glass as well. So it does hurt you a little bit from a rebounding perspective. But tonight, especially, like when he was having to be the last man back at the rim, I mean, he just doesn't impact shots at all when guys are driving. And I mean, Brook had a bunch of blocks tonight, but I thought Washington, I thought they had a good game plan. I mean, obviously worked last game to really try to attack the drop, even if when Brook was in there. They've got, especially with Gafford, he's obviously a really good lob threat, rim roller type. And I thought they did a nice job of just getting downhill, and they ended up taking a ton of shots in sort of floater range, and they were pretty good. I think they were like 11 to 26. I mean, it was like, that's okay. But again, 11 out of 26 from floater. They ended up taking a fair bit of shots at the rim, but not nearly as many as the Bucks. And I think they were like 20 and 32, which isn't like lights out. So I mean, I thought they attacked the Bucks defensively pretty well, but they ended up having about a 109 offensive rating, which is okay. If you're the Bucks, that's okay. It's not a great defensive effort. And I thought that, I mean, the big difference though was, they started 7 out of 16 from three. And what did they end up? Like 8 of 29, 8 of 30 or something like that. So they finished 1 of like 13 or 14. And that was really the thing, right? It was that it felt like the Bucks would get a little bit of separation, and then, Kispert and somebody else would like hit 2 straight threes, and then all of a sudden it's a 4-point game or something like that. And it was just like, come on, Bucks, can you guys please just shake these guys? And again, we saw like the Bucks doing their backcourt turnover bullshit. Like, it's just like, guys.
Well,
like,
we didn't see that because it happened so quickly. But I don't know what happened, but it was annoying.
Yeah, we didn't even see it. Yeah. So just again, just some of the stuff, like just shooting yourself in the foot. And again, this is what happens when George Hill has played about 1 game in the last like 3 weeks or something like that. Some of it initially was because he was benched, and now he's been sick. So like Javon Carter has been your only point guard. Tonight you at least get Drew to be your backup point guard. But especially again, not having Chris as another ball handler, you just don't have much ball handling and just honestly like good decision making and passing on the floor. So yeah, I mean, I thought the defense was didn't necessarily stand out. But I think to some extent you're playing the percentages, and we saw, I mean, late again, Splash Mountain, they could not challenge Brook ultimately at the rim too much. And even Gafford went to the line on that one foul, looked like Brook got him clean. And I think probably the most frustrating thing in fourth quarter was just some of like the loose balls and offensive rebounds. Both teams had a pretty good night offensive rebounding. I think the Bucks were at 33% and the Wizards were like 29%. Again, if you're the Bucks, you normally are expecting to be in the low 20s in terms of opponent offensive rebound percentage. So yeah, I mean, it was not as you said, not like a defensive showcase, a lot to clean up. And the other thing too is, I felt like the same thing on same thing definitely on Sunday, but then also in the game on Friday. Man, it just feels like Bud is just like first off, the Wizards can play pretty big because they often will have Kuzma at small forward, and Kuzma's a 6'9" guy, and obviously can put the ball on the floor. But it just feels like every game, like every time I look up, like Grayson Allen is defending somebody who's like 4 or 5 inches taller than him or way more athletic. It feels like Grayson is always having to like battle against somebody who's way taller. And again, part of it is because like Bud is choosing to play Grayson as like a small forward in the starting five most of the time. And again, Pat was guarding Porzingis a bunch the other game, right? With Giannis out and all this stuff. So it just feels like the Bucks so often have been like choosing to play small in a bunch of these matchups and just making it kind of hard on themselves. Ironically, I don't even know that like that Kuzma actually like took advantage of that Grayson Allen matchup a ton. I think Grayson was terrible offensive. I mean, it was another just like really brutal 1-for-9 game for him offensively. Again, defensively, he probably like competed reasonably well. I think he was like a plus 18 or something like that. Giannis was plus 25. Grayson had the second best plus minus, which again is less about what Grayson was doing and more probably just that he was on the floor when Giannis was. But yeah, it's just felt like, especially when you don't have Drew in particular, when you don't have Drew or Chris, and what's going on? They're just not playing Wes Matthews most of the time now. Like, and AJ Green's getting all these minutes. It just feels like Bud is just basically like a lot of small white dudes having to defend bigger human beings. And again, like that part, I just I question the wisdom of doing that. I feel like you want to put at least guys that have at least a bit more strength, a bit more size on the ball against some of the guys that they've been going against, in particular, like a Kuzma type. But again, tonight they were fortunate that the Wizards weren't really able to punish that. And that's another reason why, I mean, we saw Marjon play a little bit tonight, but that's another reason why, like, especially if you're not playing Wes Matthews, it's like you gotta find ways to get Marjon on the floor, just because he's at least not like a small, unathletic dude. Like he definitely makes mistakes. Like AJ Green probably makes like fewer mistakes just from like a positioning standpoint than Marjon Beauchamp does. But at the end of the day, like AJ Green is like 6'4" and weak and not athletic, right? Like he can do everything right, and he's still going to be on the business end of it when he's having to guard like freaking Anthony Edwards or something like that. So I've been a little confused by just the Bud's willingness to kind of throw his small wings sort of to into the alligator nest, or that's a terrible, there's no such thing as an alligator nest, but anyway, pool of alligators, I don't know, whatever, alligator pit, I don't know. But
the swamp
really
with the alligators,
the swamp with all the freaking big reptiles. But yeah, I just felt like he's really let those guys kind of be potentially exposed. And again, like Grayson Allen's just been going through some stuff, and not a great time for him to be doing it. Had a really great run earlier in the season with the shooting, and now it's just does not look like he has much confidence. Hit that 1-3 that kind of sparked a big run tonight, but overall, just kind of really struggled. And again, like you've got Pat, who did play well tonight, which was good to see. He's obviously had some ups and downs, but it was nice to see Pat play well. And again, you have Marjon and Wes, right? Like Wes super limited offensively, but I think at least you don't have to worry about him getting overpowered defensively. So I'm not really totally getting some of Bud's decision making and some of the rotational decisions in that regard, but and again, just some of the key absences that you've had obviously really just kind of lay bare some of the limitations of the deeper parts of the rotation, right? You got a lot of guys that are small and can't necessarily defend at a high level, but again tonight, just Giannis doing Giannis things as much as we've ever seen him do Giannis things offensively, and Brooke and Bobby, right? I mean, the bigs were really, really big offensively, and you're able to really ride that. And even with Drew coming back to have a pretty quiet first game back, you're going to need, I think, a lot more from him in Toronto if they're going to sneak out a win on the back-to-back.
Yeah, it's a tough back-to-back, and it feels like a rare back-to-back. It feels like there hasn't been too many this season, so we'll have another post-game pod tomorrow. I got to get to work, Frank, so I got to get out of here. But speaking of guys that didn't... this is work, actually. But speaking of... tell you what, I am a busy man. Just very, very busy. Another guy that just is not having a good stretch, plain and simple, and we've liked what he did to start the season, but Javon Carter is having some real struggles. But we'll have some time to talk about him over the next few days, I'm sure, along with the other guys, because there's lots of comments about Grayson Allen, which will not surprise you. Frank, thanks for making Locked On Bucks your first listen today. Now for your second listen to Game to Game NBA, every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the NBA with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver from people like myself. Follow Game to Game and Locked On NBA, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. A fun one tonight. Giannis career high 55 and 3 straight 40-point games. That's a career high for him. So he started the 50 streak. So we'll see what he can do tomorrow.
Only 10 rebounds though, Kane. The 40-20 streak snapped. Very disappointing. Very underwhelming in terms of the rebounding thing. Come on, Giannis. We need 20 rebounds tomorrow night.
That's true. Bobby, get out of the way. Let the man get his rebounds. All right. Let's wrap it up. And by the way, just quickly before we leave, Frank, a quick word on the Celtics giving up 150 to the OKC Thunder with no shade.
Take that defensive rating for the Boston Celtics. Suck it. You guys destroyed our defensive rating on Christmas Day. And the Thunder didn't even have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Very bizarre. Like Tatum and Brown both play, and again, the NBA is just a very weird place. So I don't know. We'll see. This is not an easy game. The Raptors have not been. I will definitely not go 1 for 9 in any basketball game because I will not shoot. So that's my main calling card. I will just get out of the way. The other team will desperately want me to shoot, but I won't. But yeah, if they could win tomorrow, I mean, it would be a huge feather in their cap to pull off a back-to-back. And again, I mean, we haven't seen Giannis. I feel like we have seen Giannis playing a back-to-back this year, but it feels like it's been quite a while. So again, hopefully they don't just punt this game in Toronto, because it would be nice to win more than one game in a row, Kane. That, is that asking too much? New year, new us. Come on, Bucks. Let's like actually try to win some games and not be like the freaking 5th seed or something.
We want to have some fun. We want to have another fun post-game podcast tomorrow. And as we leave you for today, we will catch you after the game, Bucks and Raptors. That's a 6:30 p.m. Central Time tip-off there. If there are any Celtics fans listening to this podcast, just remember, you always have the Christmas Day title. See you tomorrow.